It is summer of the year 1495. Charles VIII, King of France, and his army are trapped deep within enemy territory, closely pursued by a far larger hostile force. Undaunted, the French gave battle in what will prove one of the first major clashes of the Italian Wars, a series of conflicts which would devastate the Italian peninsula for decades to come. By the end of the 15th century, France was emerging as the dominant power in Western Europe. Decades prior, the French, largely during the reign of Charles VII, had recaptured all English-held territory in continental Europe save for Calais, while England itself had fallen into the calamitous War of the Roses. Furthermore, the Duchy of Brittany was now under French control, following the marriage of Duchess Anne to King Charles VIII, while the once mighty Duchy of Burgundy had ceased to exist as a major autonomous power after the death of Duke Charles the Bold. The country, once a haphazard feudal patchwork, was now a relatively united kingdom, complete with a centralized army and equipped with what was arguably the world's first artillery train. The current king, Charles VIII, grandson of Charles VII, who had taken the throne in 1483, was a dreamer and romantic who harkened back to the age of chivalry and crusade. He aimed to conquer the kingdom of Naples, justified by a rather tenuous dynastic claim, which would then be used as a base to roll back Ottoman Turkish expansion in the Balkans and Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, what we know today as Italy did not exist. Though there was a concept of Italian national identity, there was no corresponding political unity, as the peninsula was divided into a multitude of squabbling states, the most powerful of which were the Republic of Venice, the Duchy of Milan, the Republic of Florence, the Papal States, and the Kingdom of Naples. Although the polities of Italy were no strangers to war, they were probably not expecting such an incursion from the north, and indeed, the ever-present Ottoman menace likely seemed to be far more of an immediate threat than some adventurous French king from beyond the Alps. When the French invasion got off to its start, there was little coordinated resistance. Only three Italian powers, Florence, the Papal States, and Naples, directly opposed the French advance, while Milan was an ally to Charles, and the immensely wealthy Venice remained neutral. A French fleet commanded by Louis of Orleans, cousin to Charles, sailed from Marseille to link up with their allies at Milanese-ruled Genoa, while Charles himself set out with the main body of the French army and land, marching to Turin. The French then established a garrison at Asti to use as a base of operations in Italy, and prepared to push further south. This isn't to say that there was no Neapolitan response, and steps were taken to thwart the French invasion. Indeed, an ambitious spoiling attack was launched to stop the Franco-Milanese forces as they rallied in northern Italy. Here, a Neapolitan fleet, together with their Aragonese allies, landed soldiers on the Ligurian coast and seized the town of Rapallo, aiming to incite a revolt in Genoa. With hope, such an action would nip the invasion in the bud before the French could truly get a foothold south of the Alps. However, it soon turned to disaster. At Rapallo, the Neapolitans and Aragonese were caught between the French fleet at sea and veteran Swiss mercenaries in pay of Charles, as well as other Franco-Milanese soldiers by land. Trapped, they were quickly butchered in a one-sided battle. The Italians suspected that the main French advance would come through the eastern portion of the peninsula, in the province of Emilia-Romagna, and that was where most of the Papal Neapolitan army rallied. Because of this, when the French attack instead came from the west through the Apennine passes, it was very much a surprise. Outflanked, the defenders were forced to withdraw. The Florentines, whose territory stood in the French path, were confident that their strategically placed mountain fortresses would be sufficient to stop the French advance, but these proved inept in the face of French martial strength and state-of-the-art artillery. Thus, after numerous cities were captured and sacked, the Florentines were swept aside and the French overran most of Florence before proceeding to Rome. These rapid French victories forced Neapolitan forces to eventually withdraw through their own border in order to throw up another defensive line. This crumbled too, though, as the French continued forward to capture city after city using their impressive artillery train, and finally entered Naples itself. Thus far, the French had achieved remarkable success in very little time, and with astonishing ease. Ironically, though, this may have proved to be their undoing. Milan, which had been allied with the French, and Venice, which was neutral but on fairly friendly terms, were both growing deeply concerned as they watched these events unfold, fearing that their lands would become the next targets of French expansionism in Italy. In Milan, Duke Galeazzo had died of illness and been replaced by his uncle, Ludovico Sforza, who soon began plotting against Charles, seeking to create an anti-French alliance. Treating with neighboring states, the League of Venice was soon formed, composed of Milan, Venice, Naples, the Papacy, Holy Roman Empire, and Kingdom of Aragon. It mobilized a Condottiere army under the command of Francesco Gonzaga, the young Duke of Mantua, to bring the fight directly against the French, and hopefully cut off Charles from his line of retreat back to France. Still in Naples, a shocked Charles realized that despite the previous successes of his army, their position was now untenable, and he had no choice but to retreat north in order to get safely back to France, leaving a few garrisons behind to hold recently captured territory. After the main French army had left, a small Aragonese force arrived by sea, and together with Neapolitan men, rallied in southern Italy. Under the leadership of Captain Gonzalo de Cordova, they attempted to reclaim Naples, but at Seminara, the combination of the shock effect of French heavy cavalry and a relentless push of Swiss pike routed the lighter Neapolitan and Spanish forces in a lopsided battle. Meanwhile, the French slowly marched north through the peninsula, stopping at Pisa, where ladies of the court petitioned the king to protect their city's independence from Florentine hegemony, causing Charles to leave yet another detachment behind, further weakening the army. At the same time, Francesco was on the move, aiming to cut off his enemy's retreat. The stage was set for a climactic clash. This has been part 1 of 2 of my episode on the Battle of Fornovo, the first in an eventual series on the Italian Wars. So please subscribe if you'd like to see more on that conflict. Thank you.